In CareHD, we have a health check report that will help you find missing items on an appointment, to check the overall health and create like a check and balance for appointments in your office. To get to the health check report, you're going to log into your live location, go to reporting, simple reporting, health check. Again, under this report, it's kind of like a check and balance system. We have a number of reports under this tab, but it's just a quick way to check overall health of certain items in your office. I recommend that your office creates a workflow where you run the health check reports every day, or at the end of every shift, or at the end of every week. You want to stay on top of these items as they affect your billing, they affect your collections, they affect the overall health of your office. So again, I'd recommend that you create that workflow so that these are being checked regularly, because staying on top of them is easy, but catching up can be difficult if your office is not using this check and balance system. When I click on health check, you can see by default the date picker just goes to today. You can set your own custom start and end date, or you can use these date pickers to quickly select the date for you. You can see when I select month, it changed the start and end date on the date picker and on my health check report. Here's my health check dashboard. At the moment, we're just viewing the dashboard. To initiate or run the health check dashboard, I need to select my date and then click check all, or I can click run on the individual report that I want to run. I recommend that you always click check all so that you're running the health check on all of these reports. So if I click check all, you can see the reports where no items were found, and then I can see the reports where items were found. If I click on the card itself, a drop-down menu will appear where it will show the items that were flagged. So again, I can click run on the individual reports, or I can click check all. That initiates the health check of your office. Again, by default, if I'm just opening a date and opening the dashboard, it hasn't done anything yet. We have to initiate the action by clicking check all or run. On the health check report, you'll also have this appointments missing charges report. What this is looking for is an appointment on the calendar and a valid charge under a valid charge category, and flagging it on this report. Going to run check all, and I can see one item was found. If I click on the card to drill into it, I can see the item that is popping up that has been flagged. So let's walk through what this report is looking for specifically. First, it's looking at the appointment type and valid charges that have been allowed for this appointment type. These settings will be found at your system level. So let's first start with the appointment. If I go to System Settings, Appointment Settings, click on Appointment Types, and then I'm going to click on the appointment in question. The first box it's looking at is this valid charge type. It's looking at the chiropractic visit bucket that is on my tracking and reporting page. So what that is saying is anytime this adjustment appointment happens, I want to look at valid charges under this bucket, and then look under the patient's ledger and see if any of those charges appear. So the bucket it's pointing to is under System Settings, System Configuration, Tracking and Reporting. And then that appointment was pointing to our chiropractic bucket. So that is saying, again, when that adjustment appointment happens, it's pointing to this chiropractic visit bucket, which means your adjustments. You only want to have services listed here that count as an adjustment. So it's looking for, are any of these charges listed under this bucket present on the patient's ledger? If there are no charges at all, then obviously that's why it's getting flagged. But if there are not one of these valid charges, that's also why it's getting flagged. There's not a way to do a one-to-one ratio. So let's use my report of findings appointment as an example. There's not a way to say that report of findings appointment, I only want it to map to one certain service. That would be your report of findings service. I'm just pointing to this service as an example. your appointments are always pointing to one of these buckets. So if it's a situation where maybe it's your report of findings appointment is getting flagged on the report, well, then you just may need to click exclude from report. We'll go into that in a second. But that is the mapping that it's looking for. It's looking at your appointment. What bucket do you have selected under valid charge type? Then it's looking at that bucket and looking at all the charges that are allowed. And then it's going to look at your patient's ledger and see if it has any one of these present. So if I go back to my appointments missing charges health check report, I see this patient has been flagged for this appointment on this date. If I click on the patient's name in blue, it is hyperlinked and will take me to their patient snapshot. To get to the patient's ledger, I can click on the transaction snapshot over here, or I can click on transaction history. Again, I want to make sure I'm remembering the date of service, so that's 11/22, and I can scroll over the snapshot over the transaction history and see there is no charge for 11/22. I can also click into this section or transaction history and look at the ledger in detail. So I can see there is no charge for 11/22. That is why this patient is being flagged on that health check report. So if I put in one of the valid charges, I click on new transaction. I need to make sure I backdate it for that appointment date. I put in the appropriate charge. I'm going to hit submit. When I exit out of the ledger, I'm simply viewing that past health check. I need to make sure I click recheck for it to rescan that health check report. And you can see now it looked and it found there was that adjustment appointment. It had one of the valid charges on the ledger, so now we are correcting that item. Let's use another example. I've reset everything and I'm again looking at this appointment on 11/22. So this report has flagged for this patient that 11/22 appointment. This requires attention from your office and you need to verify if this is correct. So I'm going to go check the ledger. On the snapshot, I can quickly scroll and see that there is a charge for 11/22, or I can click into the ledger for further observation. But I'm looking at this and I see that there is an adjustment charge for 11/22. So what that means is there might be some configuration that needs to happen for your office that's missing. Or you have verified that this is the correct charge and you need to exclude from report. But for example, let's say that this is a common service I'm using for a certain appointment type. Well, I need to make sure that my mapping is set correctly. So this patient had the adjustment appointment. I'm going to check my mapping that we just went over. So I'm going to go to settings, appointment settings, appointment types, click on the appointment, and I see it's pointing to chiropractic visit. So I'm going to go to that bucket on my tracking and reporting page. That patient that was being flagged on the health check report had on their ledger an adjustment plus hydrotherapy service. That's not listed here. So that's why that patient is being flagged on that report. So that requires attention from your office. Maybe I need to add that service as a valid charge. I've added it to my tracking and reporting page. I'm going to hit save and then go back and run that report. So if I hit check all because I'm rerunning the report, I can see that patient does not show in this report anymore because I've corrected it in one of multiple ways. In this situation, I corrected my office's mapping because we were missing a charge that was said to be tracked for that appointment type. Again, only correct your mapping if it is office-wide that needs to be under your tracking and reporting. But in this situation, maybe I just started adding that adjustment plus hydrotherapy service and I forgot to add it to my tracking and reporting. Well, that's why those appointments were getting flagged. And so now I've corrected my mapping and I don't have to worry about that moving forward. Let's say, for example, this was your report of findings appointment and you went to this patient's ledger and verified that you had the report of findings service. I mentioned earlier how there's not a way to map a 1-to-1 ratio where the one appointment can only have one charge. There's not a mapping for that. So if you, as the office, has made the judgment call, you've looked at the ledger and verified it's correct, all you have to do is click exclude from report. That will permanently remove this appointment for this patient from this health check report. Again, this is not a temporary dismiss button. It is a exclude permanently from report. So all we're doing is flagging, saying you need to verify something. So if you verified that it's correct and there are no changes or mapping that need to be made, then just simply click exclude from report.